Sounds good.
Okay. So I'm Tamara Ledley. I'll be facilitating the call today. Longtime member of the Clean Network, one of the founding members. And I don't know if we want to, there's not very many people on the call, and I think most of everybody probably knows everybody. So I'll just start by asking if there are any announcements. This is an informal discussion today, so our announcements may evolve into our discussion.
Not an announcement maybe, but did anybody else happen on the Arizona State University webinar yesterday? Let me find the title. It was like something about governance and climate change. And it was a cross-disciplinary thing with their School of Sustainability and their law school and what was it called? Reimagining Environmental Governance in the US, the intersection between environmental justice and climate change. Anybody? All right, I will make sure, I hope they recorded it. I think they said that, actually, I think they said that they would be forwarding the presentation. It was really, really interesting. It was all students, I think grad students or law students, and presenting 3 different models that they have for putting a legal structure in place to make sure that we can address environmental justice and climate change. And while not directly an education topic, I think you guys would all really just be inspired and impressed by what they came up with. Some really cool stuff, including creating an environmental court that environmental related lawsuits could go straight to an environment court instead of having to go through the regular court system, which might give environmental justice communities a much more direct access to, Clean Water Act enforcement or something like that. So I will share that when I get it. Thanks.
Okay.
That would be great. Thanks, Ginger. Can I make an announcement?
Sure.
So Clean is doing a couple of special webinars this week for Earth Week. And so I'm just going to put in the chat the direct link to those. We have one today. Karen Kirk has developed an around wind and sun can grow American jobs. So looking at sort of the energy sector jobs and how that can help frame renewable energy in areas where it's less, exciting in terms of climate change stuff. So anyways, I'm really excited about that one. And then tomorrow we have one from a high school. Well, actually, I think he's done both middle and high school teacher. And he's done a lot of his teaching in communities that are resistant to talking about climate change. So he's going to talk about strategies he's used in the classroom to deal with that. So a couple of good webinars around sort of trying to inject some climate change education into spaces where it's harder to do so. So check those out, share them around, much appreciated. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, any other announcements?
I'll throw one in.
Oh.
There's a lot of different things going on for Earth Week this week, but this is one I've been tracking. It's an Eventbrite for the K-12 Climate Action Session that Aspen K-12 Climate Education is doing. And one of the reasons that I'm tracking this one in particular is because we were asked to deliver late last week notes to Jay Inslee, who's presenting on this. So they're presenting on our work through the governor. And so that'll be really interesting to see how he frames it, because it'll just be interesting.
Emily?
Yeah, I have one just quick thing to share. There's a new book out on entertainment education. So if anyone wants to see where entertainment education is at right now, it's only slightly climate related. There's like a couple of mentions for how it's been used, but the environmental justice work and BIPOC integration work is actually pretty heavily featured. And so Anyway, I'm just dropping the link to that new book in the chat in case anyone's curious.
Okay, thank you. Any other announcements?
Jim has his hand up.
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, so hi Katie too. I'll just make a quick announcement. We're going to be uploading the video for the STEM video showcase today, and Katie and Anna are among the co-presenters for CLEAN. So that's just making sure that CLEAN is represented, and the video is going to be coming from the point of view of students and educators, bringing out just how valuable COVID has been. Happily, we're very much in line with the theme that the STEM Video Showcase is funded by NSF, by the way. The theme this year is COVID, equity, and social justice, and that's something that the students and the educators will definitely speak of, and how valuable CLEAN has been to getting us through the pandemic. So.
Yes, and it's a great video that Jim's put together. Thank you so much for doing that. And he's highlighting CLEAN in there. And Jim, I'm just responding to your email about co-presenters. We're gonna, I have one more person I'd like to add, and then leave that last thought for you. So thank you so much.
Jim, can you put the video in the chat, or is that available?
If I heard that right, I'll put in what the STEM Video Showcase is. That where for 2021 it will be appearing. They've had these go on since 2016, and I think CLEAN did a past one, but at least has participated in the past at least once, right?
Yeah,
anyway,
the videos won't be live until next week, or it's like early May. Jim, when do the videos actually go?
It's even May. So there's a week of when once they're live, but there's a week of when they're first released, and that's May 11th to 18th. And they claim that, the evidence is there that they bring about 50,000 people in to see it, and there's a lot of interaction. So I think the thing that probably stands out the most is various government programs, federal government funded programs that are STEM related have a chance to relate to each other. I think that's what really much stands out, that people see each other's videos, you see things, you learn about each other's programs. So there's a lot of cross-pollination. And of course, CLEAN should it's very important that CLEAN is among the leading STEM programs in the country. So yes, I will put that in shortly.
Okay, thank you. Any other announcements?
Can I ask a quick question of Deb about her announcement real quick?
Sure.
I'm just curious, Deb, about as Biden is building out his climate reach, is Jay Inslee a convincing governor's voice for other governors? Like, what is your take on his influence on other governors in terms of climate action?
That's a good question, and we've been thinking about that internally, just because of the work that we've been doing around learning in the state, and that we're continuing to do. I think that the holistic approach that he's taken to climate action, and that it's been going on for quite some time, is pretty convincing to other governors. And that so like this year, there are 2 provisions in the governor's budget that were specifically about climate learning as building capacity and community awareness. One of them was a refunding of the Climb Time initiative, which we're in our 3rd year now. And so that's working with educational, so teacher capacity building. And the second was a new proviso that we got asked to do at the Institute around pre-service teacher education and building curriculum and resources. So the capacity building frame of the work is really beneficial, because it's not just saying, like some of the other states are saying, like, let's have K-12 science, climate change education standards across all areas with no capacity funding supporting it. So it's a little bit more like his money is where he says that he's doing the work. So, and the Senate and the House are coming through on it, it seems. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's encouraging. Thanks for sharing that.
Any other announcements? I did want to make one. I'm going to put this in the chat. Environment America is having a carbon pricing webinar today, talking about different strategies for putting a price on global warming. So the link for registration is right there, but so it's available today. Also, it's going to be today also.
There's 2 hands up.
Okay, Frank Grenshaw.
Thanks. So I did something a little wonky here with the chat, which was that I went into the D2L shell for the course that I'm teaching and copied all of the upcoming events that I was presenting the students with. And the reason why I did that, which you guys are already on top of, was that I want to add more to that list of events. So definitely, if folks see things that aren't in that list that I just had to paste 5 times, please let me know.
Okay, and did somebody else have their hand up? Eric? No? Somebody else?
I think Jim might have had his, or he already did his.
I think he did his, he just put his down.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't seeing the virtual hands. Any other announcements? Okay, well, there seems it's Earth Week. There's a lot of activity going on. Is there an area that today is an informal discussion day? So is there an area that people are interested in exploring further, going in more depth about what the activities are this week?
I have a question for people, or maybe a challenge for people as they go about Earth Day week. I have heard a lot in the last couple of weeks as people have been prepping for Earth Day. I have heard a lot about climate change. And I've heard a lot about new ways that people are using the idea of climate justice, like that people are trying out the term climate justice. I want everyone on this call to kind of make a commitment to like probing people on what they mean by justice, because I'm not seeing it like when it actually hits the ground, and I'm seeing the use of the term because it's popular, but not the actual action behind it. So I would love us all to poke at it and be like, so what do you mean by justice? And like, what does that look like in your work? And like those kinds of questions, not maliciously, but just to get people to be accountable to the use of such ideas.
Okay, well, maybe we can actually challenge ourselves to right now to discuss that. But before I do that, is there anybody who is new on the call? We'd like you to introduce yourselves. I think most people know each other, but if you're new, please speak up and introduce yourself to everybody.
I'm new-ish, so I can say hi.
Okay,
I'm
Tiffany.
I'm with UCAR Center for Science Education, and so we've been generally around for a long time, but we haven't been actively participating in these meetings for a while, and we are starting to pick that up. And a couple colleagues, Melissa and Emily and I, are kind of rotating because of bandwidth, rotating through, trading off weekly meetings. So you will hopefully see one of us from UCAR SciEd in most of these meetings now, and we're happy to kind of get re-engaged.
Where's UCAR?
Boulder, Colorado, sorry.
Oh, you've got the, I was thinking University of Carolinas because you've got the back behind you. Okay.
Oh yeah, no, this is just where I wish I were right now.
Don't we all?
Yeah, we're in Boulder.
And
Nice to have you, Tiffany.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's really nice to have you all. I'm glad you're joining us more. And UCAR Science Education, they're based at the National Center for Atmospheric Research. So they've done a lot of atmospheric-based education, and including climate. But I think they've really stepped up the game in terms of some of the climate stuff. So I think it's good timing for you all to join us. I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it too. We kind of just decided it was past time to get back in here.
Anybody else is new or new-ish?
I'm newish.
Okay, Cheney, go ahead.
Myself 2 weeks ago, but for those of you who, I'm Cheney. I work for the Reading and Writing Project at Teachers College at Columbia University, and I guess the 2 big things: I'm organizing a climate or an NGSS Science Literacies and Activism Symposium at Teachers College for 3 days in May, from May 17th to the 19th. I'll put the link in the chat. We're still looking for a couple presenters. I would love somebody from Clean if they're interested. We've run out of budget, so it would be a volunteer thing, but it would probably be about 30-minute presentation. They're really short. So if anybody's, I'll just kind of quickly show you the, oops, sorry, that's not the right one.
What's the audience for that group, Jeannie? Is it mostly
So
undergraduates?
it's like, it'll be about probably 150, mostly science teachers, 3rd through 12th grade, some principals, some APs, some curricular coordinators. We have Paul Anderson coming, who's an amazing science teacher, Dr. Anna Elizabeth Johnson, Melissa Stewart's a great nonfiction writer, David Wallace Wells, the director of TED Ed. There's a lot of great kind of opening and closing speakers. And then we have a bunch of choice workshops. Yeah, a few people from the All We Can Save.
I know, Anna Johnson's like,
Yeah.
she was one of the main writers on
Yeah,
this.
got some great folks there.
Yeah, she's amazing. So if any of you are interested, I can also arrange to get like passes or tickets for anybody who would like to attend even parts of it. And then the other part of the time I'm working on something called the Climascope project, which is basically, it's mainly focused on reading and writing teachers, but it's a student-facing curation of digital text sets for climate and environmental content, projects, and actions. I won't like do the full tour, but I'm kind of half working for the Reading and Writing Project, and half kind of building up this organization, which is trying to make it easier for teachers to teach climate change across the curriculum, which is very aligned to what Clean is already doing. And so I'm interested in talking to you about your process and learning from you all.
You put if you didn't already, the link for what you just showed and your own email address in there?
Yeah, I will.
I'm just gonna jump in and say, Jeannie, I put my email address in the chat as well. And in terms of presenting for like the collection and resource side of Clean and like support for educators and things like that, I'd love to do that. And we should connect through email about that. If others have other desires or whatever, but if you were looking for that side of Clean, definitely like we should connect on that. And I don't need to get paid because we have funds to help market Clean, and this would be part of that. So send me an email and I'd love to connect with you about it.
A question for Cheney?
Yeah, Jim, go ahead.
Definitely my ears pricked up when I heard you have tickets. I mean, it was a little expensive to just register. So
for sure. I would, yeah. Will you just email me, Jim? I put my email in the chat.
Certainly.
But okay. I think for sure we can figure something out.
It doesn't have to be free. It doesn't have to be free, but you know, when something's expensive, you think, well, I don't know. Yeah.
It would be free. It's mainly schools that are already part of the Reading and Writing Project that will be attending this. There'll be some people who pay out of pocket, but most people will just be guests or folks who are already part of the Reading and Writing Project kind of network. But yeah, I can definitely get you a ticket to come and attend like part or all of it.
What is the date again?
It's May 17th to the 19th. And it starts like around noon Eastern time and then goes till about 5 p.m. Eastern time.
Okay, so I'm gonna not too much put you on the spot, but I'm going to take up Deb's challenge and put it towards you. And does your event or the work you're doing address this? I mean, what do you mean by is climate justice an element of this? And if so, how is that integrated?
Yeah, so I have two amazing students who I met here in the Bay Area who are opening and closing the symposium, and their focus is on climate justice. And they're two young women of color who are activists who are super engaged in the climate space. So they'll be talking about climate justice, inequality, environmental racism, why we should be teaching those kind of things alongside of like science. So it'll be bookended by kind of climate justice for the opening and the closing. And then there'll be some explicit workshops around climate justice. I know Dr. Ayanna Lewis Johnson will talk about it. We're trying, I have a meeting with the Rising Voices Center tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
Which is like the Indigenous science. I'm hoping that we can figure out some kind of meaningful collaboration where they would want to come present without it feeling kind of extractive to them. So there's a lot of ways. I don't think we're doing enough by any means. It's something I'm trying to push my organization and myself. But we're trying to plant the seeds.
Yeah, it's just that, as Deb suggested, I mean, when I try to think of the term climate justice, there's so many different avenues that you could think of. I mean, one is obviously the communities that are impacted, but in our work in education, it's also the people we're educating and how we're educating them. And so what tact is your students going to take and your event going to take?
Well, yeah, I think it's centering things around frontline communities, marginalized communities, both in terms of impact, but also in terms of all the good work that's being done. Like it's not just centering the voices of everything that's hard and difficult and all the threats. It's all the powerful work that's being done in those communities that are often overlooked. So it's so vast and all encompassing. It needs to be totally integrated in what we're doing all the time, I think, in every class.
So Jenny, I'll shoot you a note, but like one of the things too is thinking about what I think there's two things maybe that this group can offer, probably more than that, but like two things I can think of clearly. One is what Katie just said. So something about like what is the resourcing? I think of that as infrastructuring. What is the sort of the backbone of resources and learning that can be offered through the Clean portal, through the Clean resources in the network? And then I think the other thing that it sounds like, and I know most of those folks that you have on the list here, but it seems like if you're moving into NGSS specifically, it might be helpful to have somebody like myself or somebody like other people who are specialists in NGSS sort of implementation work, particularly with justice. So if it doesn't work for me, I know several others who are in that vein that might be good connection points. And I can think about some of the New York sort of based folks if that's better for you. But there's only a few folks that are really in that space writing about climate justice, like from their research and practice space. So I'd have to think about that.
That would be great. I would love, my main job right now is just talking to as many people as I can. So I would love that. And it doesn't have to be New York based. It can be anywhere. I'm based in the Bay Area right now, but obviously Columbia's in New York, and this whole event is virtual, and so it can be anywhere.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'll shoot you an email about it.
That would be great.
So, and I'll put the challenge out to everybody else on the call. How is your work addressing climate justice, and what do you mean by climate justice in the way you implement it in your work?
So Tamara, one thing I can say from where I am is, with the ACE framework work we did, one of the key findings of that was that climate justice was at the center of it, and the community put it there. And we're listening to where that positioning is. And so now I'm holding that as we go from community framework to national initiative. I have to go through a process to getting nominated as a focal point is one thing. Getting an agenda signed off on by John Kerry and Gina McCarthy that leads a national initiative is another thing altogether. Holding that positioning as we go through this agency process. And I don't mean agency in the sense of like, no, as an agency. I mean like charge me to do these things. And
How
because
does
right
that
now I
charge
don't.
get, how does that charge get developed? Do you have input into that, or do you just receive it?
Oh yeah. No. Oh no. I am writing a full memo covering all the agenda items and going through them one by one with them and making sure that what they want done and what we are positioned to do become one thing. And that process is just getting underway right now. Tamara, I have no idea how we're going to do it because we're making it up, as we have never done anything like this before. So we are creating this, but I need that because on the 28th, I'm speaking to the international community on initiatives we're going to do on ACE as we build the COP26. I got to get top cover, and then from that we get resources to do things at a higher level than we currently have at our disposal. So, but the key point relative to your query was that, community put climate justice at the center of this work. And so I am doing everything I can to hold it there. And whether it's being pushed out or it's being pulled even further into the center, I won't know until we go through this process.
And is the focus in your work the United States, or has it international piece to it in terms of climate justice?
So, really great question. One of the interesting things about it is that United States is the largest economy in the world, with the largest commitment to the cause of climate change due to our historic and current emissions. Our work cannot be uniquely focused on the United States. We have obligations and programs that are both domestic, but also international, like USAID, State Department, NASA, NOAA, other agencies have international efforts that they do, and especially given that we have the unique, what's the word? I'm trying to be nice. Distinction of being the only country that pulled out of the Paris Agreement. As we come back in, the rest of the world is going to be watching us incredibly carefully. And if we come in and say, we're doing this amazing ACE work, and they're like, for your country only, that's going to look terrible. So, let's avoid that black eye, or even worse, but also do good work for the world, including ourselves. So that's just how we do that. But I have to position this all and get their clear buy-in.
So just so I can give you a little perspective, I just ran the World Climate Negotiation Simulation with the C-ROADS model, which Cheney, by mistake, I think, flashed up on the screen briefly in my classes at the university. So these are college students, and they write reflections on it. And basically what the exercise is that the class is divided into these nations or nation blocks, and they need to negotiate the Paris Agreement or something similar to it. And early on, when that World Climate Simulation, we actually ran one in our 1-hour session here on the Clean Network Call. And I think we were part of one that Juliet Rooney-Varga ran at the AGU meeting for one of our clean workshops. And during that process, I really discovered that what you're doing is not really be able to give valid commitments for India or China or whatever, but the power of that simulation is in pointing out to the participants, in this case, my students who are all business undergraduates, what the challenges are for doing that climate negotiation, not just the science itself, but the economic, the social, the cultural challenges. And their reflections, they write these little essays afterwards as to how this impacted them. And they really saw how, here they are, they were doing a simulation, they're playing with funny money. They're supposed to, in addition to making commitments for stopping greenhouse gas emissions and starting to decrease them, they also have to decide how much their nation or nation block is going to contribute to a green climate fund, or need to request from a green climate fund. That the goal in the Paris Agreement was $100 billion a year. And the students really have no idea how much helping India reduce its emissions is going to cost. So that part is that part is needs to be set aside. But the challenges that the students had in terms of seeing how each nation was out for its own benefit and not really for the benefit of the planet. And it came up over and over again in their reflections in terms of what it is, instead of thinking about what's good for the planet as a whole and not looking out for what's good for me, is, I think, the basic challenge. And I think that kind of gets at the core of climate justice. So I think it's very interesting because in the sense that by working on addressing the mindset of these students who, I mean, they are the most idealistic group of people, you know, you can make the 18 to 22-year-olds, thinking about being able to think in a concrete way about not only what the scientific challenges are, but the interplay with those social and economic and climate justice challenges are, is where I think an effort needs to really be made in this large framework. And so I think that, Frank, you're being able to take that into whatever the agenda points that you're planning is probably is a really important piece. Anybody else want to share how climate justice is reflected in their work?
This is Ginger. Hopefully my dog is not going to start barking crazy. There's squirrels and people walking their dogs outside. So I'm also, hold on, sorry.
I know that problem.
I could jump in while Ginger, oh, sorry, she's back. I'll let her go.
Sorry, I live on a public easement. So I've been going to meetings with the American Society of Adaptation Professionals, and yesterday I've been sitting in on their JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion planning team, and Beth Gibbons, the chair of ASAP, brought up the idea that using the term frontline community, frontline is a war term, and we often think of frontline communities as expendable. And how do we start reframing it to show like communities that are impacted first, or most directly impacted, or most heavily impacted, without using that war terminology, which many people just think of as expendable. So that's my climate justice puzzle.
That's interesting, because I think of the term war as the most dangerous region, not the most expendable region.
Well, and I don't tend to think in military terminology, but there were several people that agreed, and Queen Ket from the Gullah Geechee has been on these calls, and she definitely agreed that she doesn't like that terminology. So we brainstormed and played around, and we're not going to change how people talk about it in the news or whatever, but showing that they're important and they are the most impacted. So it's an interesting question to bring up in other climate justice spaces, whether that's how they see it. And one of the words that I think we kind of latched onto after our brainstorming was forefront, which is less loaded and can imply either you're on the forefront, you're on the edge where the most impact is feeling, or you could be on the forefront of resiliency or adaptation planning. And just forefront also indicates leading, and it could be a positive or a negative. So just that's what I'm pondering this week.
Okay, thanks. Eric, you thought you had some comments?
Oh yeah, and I'm thinking about climate justice from the lens of the youth specifically, and sort of this intergenerational, piece that they'll be picking up, and the earth that will be different for them. And so I've been kind of working on, been doing a lot of reflecting, especially since being in the Clean Network and sort of doing a lot of networking around climate education specifically. And so I thought about my own path and story kind of into the climate space. And so what I did a couple of weeks ago was I created a presentation for a group of New York students, a 9th and 10th grade students at a charter school called Nest Plus M. They're focused on STEM and math specifically. And they did a pre-assessment survey where they asked the 3 basic questions. What do you know about climate? What do you want to know? And what are you most concerned about? So I took all of that information. It was, maybe 350 pieces of feedback from all the students that participated in the survey. And I built the entire presentation around their questions, basically, and then embedded my own story as an example of how I got interested in the space to get them to kind of start to reflect on their own interests and concerns specifically, so that because that was really transformational for me in college to sort of this is what got me into it. And then things kind of pursued or kind of, went from there. So I think the earlier on that students are able to kind of self-reflect and really make connections to what's important to them, kind of, speaking to Ginger, what you were saying, like there are so many things going on in different communities of color and, that are really empowering and really are on the front line, at the forefront, using that terminology. And those are the things I think, we've been having a lot of discussions about, youth want to see themselves reflected in people that are teaching them in part. But also I think at the end of the day, we all want to collaborate together on this. But I think it starts with personal empowerment, right? And personal stories and understanding yourself, where you're coming from. And then you grow into this idea of seeking out allies of different ages or different colors, different ethnicities, different backgrounds, socioeconomic. So anyway, I think it went pretty well overall. And it was a different approach to teaching climate science because it was less about science and more about because of this idea that we're trying to build out an interdisciplinary kind of understanding and engagement in this space. And so I think using storytelling engages, the other parts of our brain, the creative thinking, potentially the art piece, if within your story you're using visuals, because visuals are really impactful, or video, animations, models and things like that. But anyway, I'm excited. I'm going to, Cheney put the challenge to me because I'm going to be presenting this idea hopefully at the conference in New York, the 17th to the 19th, one of those days. And it'll be great to have this case study to sort of reflect on. But anyway, big picture storytelling to engage youth and their sort of meta level understanding of their own concerns, I guess I'd say.
Okay, thank you. Somebody else want to share? Emily, did you have something to add to what Eric was describing?
Well, not particularly, but as long as I'm chatting, there was a photo contest held here in Santa Cruz, and I got a chance to look at the results for the climate image sets. There were some interesting results, I think. I got back more stream bed activities than I expected to from I would say the South County region, which is we're talking about different sets of communities. So our North County would be like more affluent and white. The South County is more Hispanic, and so it was really interesting to see that's how some of those youth are framing climate engagement for them. How active in the ecology areas they were, and there was also one of the other things that I noticed was that the collective agency work had a lot to do with protesting, not constructive building stuff together. So as a narrative reframe, I think that there's some work to be done there about helping people see what collective action looks like constructively. And there was a real lack of energy education. We didn't get back, any electrification images at all in that one. I mean, it was one quick, photo set. So I'm hoping that expands later, but I did reach out to the community energy programs that are building regenerative energy here, and go, hey, can we work on this together? So that's, that's where conversation and storytelling went this week. And then one of the interesting points that the energy folks said was that really what they're looking at is transitions over time, and that the still images might not solve it completely. And so I'm starting to think about in a multimedia format, or how to combine that so that we get narratives over time reflected better in the visuals. So, I guess just from a story perspective, that's kind of what I'm thinking about this week, Eric.
Nancy?
Yeah, let me just build on to what both Eric and Emily were saying in the photo contest here and so forth. I'm having the opportunity starting next week to help teach a 7th grade class up in Washington State. And the thing that I think this sense of the kinds of questions Eric posed, only I would add to it the 4th question of what did they know or hope for in terms of solutions or things that excite them. And that sense of really focusing on reflection and what it means personally. And then I think the next thing out from that are changes that are within your reach to make. And for many people, especially young people, but all different ages, being able to look at recovery, restoration, getting your hands in the dirt. There's a sense in which there's no impediment to that. You can reach for it directly. You don't need political approval or action. And I think something like making changes in the use of energy is at best something that an adult individual in a position to purchase something can do. And that's already a reach. And then much of the rest of it has to do with larger questions of technology and infrastructure and public policy. So having kind of a model of, maybe you could think of it as concentric circles. I think of it as looking at each sector. What are the changes already occurring in each sector, and how are those manifesting? And then asking the question, what are the choices I have as an individual person? And right now, the tendency of almost all that discourse focuses on us as consumers, not as agents. We should buy different things. And shifting into the sense of deep democracy. And in the case of people of all ages, but again, younger people or people in life transition, the deeper life choices. I've been using the phrase making a living, making a life as a way of framing the challenges of younger people these days. They have, it was pointed out to me, and I've thought about it a lot this past year, that there is this call to save the world, either to ignore it and shrink from it, or to take it on and throw yourself into trying to save the world. And that's a really important part of the process. But to do it in community, to do it with spiritual, emotional grounding, and to also recognize, and meanwhile, I have to survive. Meanwhile, I have to figure out a very different, not just me, with other people in community, figure out a very different path that our lives may take over a lifetime. How are we going to live? Will we have children? What about food? What about worthwhile work? As we've talked about many times, Emily, how do you get paid for doing the work that is needed, which is what Frank is really trying to make happen. So I just want to throw those questions into the mix. They are all the more intense when you're talking about climate justice. But framing this sense of agency, how do we support that? How do we legitimize even posing it? In talking with a lot of younger people, one of the most painful things is that the older generations, those of us still living in the old world, if you will, have expectations of young people, as older people normally do. Somehow you're going to do the kind of life I did, or that I wish I had done, and you're going to do it better than I am, because that's what younger people are supposed to do. And you should quit fooling around, quit slacking. You should get your act together. But in a world that is changing this rapidly, and as one young person pointed out to me, their generation has 8% of the economy compared to our generation, which had like 35%. And I don't know exactly what that references to treat it like a metaphor right now, but really legitimizing the depth of conversation in community feels like an important dimension to what we're talking about. And again, I just frame it as we keep thinking of changing our behavior as consumers. It's so American. That's the extent of what it means, you know, to be an agent is to change what you buy. But going into these deeper levels, I'm hoping that in our conversations here in Clean, that we can look at how these this holistic different aspects of what it means not only to embrace climate, but the whole uncertainty of the future and the sense of owning our agency, but not just in the narrow sense, but the fulfillment of who we are as human beings. I have come to redefine higher education as that which elicits, enables, and empowers our higher purposes, hence higher education. And that kind of holistic framing in the context of the immediate forcing factors and opportunities that come with climate, especially viewed as a function of social justice.
I'm just going to jump in and say there's some hand raised, and I know Tamara said she had trouble seeing those earlier, so I just want to make sure that those people have chance. I think Frank's had his up the longest.
Oh, okay. Here I have Patrick, his hand is at the top of the list here.
I'm good either way, Frank. You want to flip a coin for it?
And actually, what I was going to say is I've got something totally off topic. The reason why I got my hand raised is I wanted to bring it up before we end today.
Okay.
Otherwise than that, I don't have to have it right now.
Okay.
All right. Well, kind of thinking a little bit into Nancy's comments and some of my focuses recently. Was at a meeting with some leaders from Alaska a couple years ago, and the very simple statement offered was that we can't address climate change until we address coloniality. That really struck me because it was so simple and so direct. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna embrace that. I'm gonna jump into this decolonial work. Then I was talking to one of my mentors, Dan Wildcat, who's a wonderful Indigenous scholar. And Dan said, man, don't claim yourself as a decolonialist. Do not go there. Because he said it's a place where he sees a lot of folks breaking each other down. And when people step into that space and say, I'm a decolonialist, somebody else say, you're not decolonial enough. You've been flipped by the system, and that's not really true. And so he strongly advised me to really define what it means to work from a decolonial lens rather than claim yourself as a decolonialist. And
what does that mean?
So to me, what that means is focusing on 4 realms of relationship. And I've been trying to really bring this into all the different and varied projects and aspects of my work. The first is a relationship with self, really thinking through, writing through, and considering your positionality. And being really honest about that as you navigate these different realms, where you can claim a voice of experience and where you can extend that positionality to provide support for others who may not have it. The second realm being a relationship with community. And for me, what that looks like is really considering power dynamics and how we treat those, especially with myself working in the university. I see that the university is in large part still built to enshrine power and keep it where it currently is, rather than disrupt those systems and extend out opportunities. So thinking about how to support those in these systems that currently don't have that aren't seen to have as valued a voice, and lift those voices up in that context. The third place is really considering how to make the shift from looking at the world in terms of resources to relationships. And that's a really difficult shift, I think. Put succinctly, as I was trying to wrap my head around that and settle into what that feels like, and Sherry Mitchell talks a lot about that in her work, but it's that idea that when you walk into a place, you don't ask, what is that river? You ask, who is that river? That's a fundamental shift in how we treat the world, and not saying, what can it give us, but how can we work in partnership with the natural world around us? And so as I've been promoting my art science partnership work, I've been asking those that are developing projects using these guidelines to use that perspective and consider how their projects are in relationship with their community and the natural world around them. The final piece of that puzzle that I've been thinking a lot about is time, recognizing that time is a construct of coloniality, and that we've really pushed so much forward so quickly with the false idea that there's this constricted space of like, we must get it done here, and if we can't come to consensus here, then we have to do a second best, and really taking a step back and trying to make more space in this system, knowing that we have to move quickly. But one of my favorite quotes is, we're in a hurry, so we have to take our time, because if we don't do things really well, it's just not what we're doing right now. So those are my 4 realms of work around climate justice.
All right, well, thank you. We only have a few more minutes, and we have Deb Morrison, James Callahan, and then Frank Granshaw. So Deb, you want to make your comment?
Okay, to pass to Jim if you want, Jim. My comments were really just more about, I think Patrick caught a lot of them, and I added a couple of resources for people to think about that are really valuable. They're created out of Megan Bang's work on learning in places. And so, yeah, and the only other question I would have put into all of that conversation on justice that we've just heard is, like, I always think about who's at the table, who's there making the decisions at any and every stage of the work about what constitutes the work and who has power to decide that.
Okay, thank you. James Callahan.
Yes, so if I'm going to return to a point from Nancy, it is not to step away from what either Deb or Patrick say. As usual, I very much agree with you. I mean, these are all solid points that we don't want to forget, and we don't want to do. Patrick, Deb, right on. Thank you. The one wanting to underline is for young people. People have heard me say this before, the thing of having ways in which they can be taking action now as young people, because, and this is the thing, I mean, my background is engineering, electrification, all those fields where I know the professionals. Children can't do that. It's dangerous. They need the certification. You need 22 years of education. But yet there are so many things that they can do, and not just do at the family and the school level, although that's important too. What I guess the thing is that we continue to find ways to pool the different ways around the community. There's many people on this phone call who are doing that, who have found examples, or there's examples where the kids are taking action, and so that they can get ideas, and that's inspiration. I mean, what we do, we have one with energy where they can do energy surveys, real energy surveys on the city level. It's fun, it's active, it's safe, it's exciting, it's cool things. But that's one of, there can be dozens and dozens and hundreds of them. And just want to underline that thing of being able to be active, to get experience, to be involved, to be taken seriously. Kids need that. We all need that. It's not wait till you're 26 and until then all you can do is plead. All you can do is plead to your legislatures or someone else, the adults, to take action. Right? That policy, all that's important too. That's part letter writing. All that's extremely essential. But it's not just you plead to the adults to take action and then you're stuck for 26 years. Kids don't want that, and I wouldn't want that either.
Okay, since Frank said that his was on a different topic, I'm just going to very quickly share my screen here, because I think it's a graphic that I use in my Classroom Climate Interactive that gets at these spheres of influence. And I just thought that this might be just an interesting way to help people think about it. going from the personal level to the cultural level and the complexities of one to the other. But from the things that I've learned over the past few years, you need that to address that personal level, but you need to have everybody address that personal level, because that helps build the political will to do things collectively as you move out to these further spheres. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I just wanted to quickly do that. And so now I will give, we have 2 minutes left. So Frank Granshaw, you can have the last say here.
Okay, let's see how fast and how briefly I can talk. Thanks for that, Tamara. I made a screenshot of it. Really quickly here, past couple of weeks, I had the opportunity to talk with 2 different groups in Scotland. Climate Reality Chapter West in just outside of Glasgow, and then Quakers in Scotland. And the topic of the discussion was how to get them connected in with virtual bridge activities. That very quickly, they are very eager to make contact with people here in the States. They were excited to have contact with people in the States. They had, I'm going to be meeting again with them soon. And one of the things, there's 3 asks that they had that I really would appreciate some help with. They want to make some connections with youth groups. They want to make connections with U.S. indigenous communities. And Jim, you're still here. Discovered that the green zone, or I guess it's the blue zone, is actually going to be at the Glasgow Public Science Center. And so there's some real, I'm going to start working on some connections there. And Nancy, I want to talk to you because Quakers in Scotland, there's a whole bunch of things that we need to chat about. So yeah. And with that, I'm going to stick my email really quickly in the chat. And now I'm done.
Frank, do you want us to email you, or will you email out to all of us on the group? Because I really would love to see those asks in a way that I could respond to them on email.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think the best way to do that. I mean, Deb, I've got your email. I don't think I've got everybody.
Why don't you just send it to the Clean Network list? You might actually get even people that were not on the call.
Good. I'll do that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
And Frank, remember the Maryland contingent of the Quakers is aligned with your purpose.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much to everyone today for our rich discussion about climate justice. See you next time.
Have a great week.
You too.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.